Welcome to the Fuck the Stigma podcast, Cassie. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good today.
So I want to clarify before starting this. Fuck the Stigma, our podcast, our platform is overall like a safe space for anybody to come on and talk about whatever they've struggled with or whatever they want to open up about. So today I brought Cassie on here to talk about her transitioning and her transition and her kind of being herself and out and open in the world.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your past few weeks.
So, over the past few weeks, I've been slowly coming out as trans. I've been working with a therapist to kind of get a game plan on what we're going to do, on how I'm going to do this so that I'm most comfortable.
Yeah.
And I've just had this desire of living an authentic life, and I'm tired of hiding. So I went ahead and I was just like, I'm going to do this. Like, I went back home, told my family, which I was super scared to do.
Yeah.
Because
Well, yeah, what was the fear with that?
the fear was they were going to reject me. They weren't going to accept me. And the biggest fear I was afraid of was honestly hearing them if they said like, oh, you're making a bad choice. You shouldn't be doing this. Have you thought about this? X, Y, Z, Z, Z. But like, it was amazing. Like my father, he just told me, he was like, I love you. You know, I'm happy for you. I'm glad, you know, you moved down to LA so that you can live your life. And then my mother, I told her and she was just like, I know. Yeah.
She was like, oh, you're not realizing.
Yes. She was like, oh, I know.
Didn't she pick your middle name?
Yeah. So I wanted her to be involved and I was waiting to pick a middle name because I wanted it to be like the authentic experience of being named. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Yeah. So I wanted, because I chose my first name, but I at least wanted my middle name to be something that I didn't choose. And so she gave me the middle name Lynn after my grandma.
fuck yeah.
So it was a really good experience with my mother. And she told me the same thing, you know, live your life. You don't have to be around people who've known you for 20, 30 years. So it'll be easier for people out here's mind to adjust to this.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it definitely does take a while
Mm-hmm.
to accustom to like new pronouns and a new name. For me, when my brother came out to me as like, oh, I'm a dude now,
Mm-hmm.
I try to pick it up as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But like, honestly, to this day, our parents still use the birth name and the she, her pronouns when referring to him. So yeah, it's a process. But, and it's harder for, I don't know, I feel like Hispanic parents who don't even understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Porterville, California, which is the southern part of the Central Valley. It's like an agriculture town, very conservative. And growing up there, it was difficult to be queer. Mm-hmm. Like you would get the stares, you would get the comments. I mean, I've been hate crimed before.
What?
Yeah. So, and a really good friend of mine is trans, and I would see her experience being openly trans and see the reaction from people being so negative and violent. I was scared. I was like, well, I can't do this here. This will be for something for another lifetime.
Oh.
And we were at a party one time and this man was attracted to her and tried to sleep with her, and she told him no. And he got aggressive and he started attacking her. And so I stepped in and I started getting attacked, and it was very scary.
Yeah.
And like that really stuck in my head for a long time because I know how people can react. And it's not just like people being negative, it's people will kill me. We were the only town in California, from my knowledge, to ban gay pride.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. And it's just like all of these messages were sent to me and I was just like, okay, well, I thought this was never going to happen and I so desperately wanted it to. And I'm so happy.
For how long have you known?
I remember being in second grade and I used to always hang out with a group of girls. And I remember one day my teacher approached me and was like, you need to go hang out with the boys. And I was like, why? I'm hanging out with the girls. All the girls hang out together. And she was like, you're a boy. You need to go hang out with the boys. And I like cried and I was like, no, those are all my friends. And it was just like, I remember that was the first time that I realized I was a boy because I mean, when you're so young, your kids don't know about gender roles really.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
So they just start migrating to where they feel comfortable and like
Yeah.
alike.
Yeah. So that was the first experience of me realizing that something didn't match up in my body or how I was perceived.
Yeah. People weren't perceiving you how you felt.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you identified as a gay man for how long?
So I identified as a gay man. I realized I was attracted to men when I was in 6th grade. And I lived, that experience of being a gay man presenting as a gay man up until like a few weeks ago full time.
Full time?
No, because no longer full time being a gay man.
Yeah.
Because right now.
It was a full-time job.
Yep. I clocked in. I'm not clocking out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You were slowly coming out to people.
Yeah.
Not just doing it all at once.
Yes.
Which I think is also smart because you're also in addiction recovery.
Yes. And I didn't want to rip the Band-Aid off because I didn't know if I could emotionally handle it. Because I want to be able to be comfortable in this and do it at my pace.
Yeah.
So I came out to my friend Spencer, who is also trans. So I work a program. I'm in Narcotics Anonymous. And I have a higher power in that program. And I'll say God, but I don't believe in the Christian God. But it's just easier for me to say that.
Yeah.
So this was God working in my life. I went to rehab. And when I left rehab, I went to sober living. And the room that I got placed into was Spencer's room. So the trans man that was there. And I really think that God put us together so that we could build a relationship and I could start exploring my gender identity with somebody who was safe.
Somebody who wouldn't be judgmental. And even if you did come to we did come to the realization that you were trans, feel accepted and heard.
Yeah, 100%. And it really, we would sneak off to West Hollywood to go to meetings. And like, it was such a freeing experience to finally start to explore myself and working my steps in Narcotics Anonymous. That's when I finally was like, who am I? In my heart of hearts, who am I? I'm no longer I dropped all of those other identities. I'm no longer a nurse. I'm no longer a homeowner. I'm no longer all of those things that, we put on ourselves as material or accomplishments.
Things outside of ourselves that we make our identity.
Exactly. So when you take those away, and when I did, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
I don't know who I am anymore. So I was able to start exploring that. And through my steps, I got to my inventory and I was like, oh shit, there's one thing I'm not working on. I'll work on everything else, but I'm not going to work on that, which was being trans. And I finally was like, you know what? This is something I have to explore, be it this is what is meant for me or it is not. So I started looking into it and seeing where was I going to be pulled to? And that's where I was gravitating towards. So I started making the process.
So how far in your sobriety did that happen?
So I started working on my 4th step when I was 4 months clean. I finished when I was 5 months clean.
Oh, that's really good.
Oh, I wanted to.
You wanted to work.
I wanted to get better.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
So I finished my 5th step after my 5 months, whatever. And that's when I addressed it, but I still was kind of quiet about it. Mm-hmm. When I said my 4th step to my sponsor, I was like, and I also want to I just quickly went over it so that we didn't have to
dig too deep.
Yeah. So I was like, this
is that. Skim over.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I've always wanted to be a girl, blah, 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 but I don't want to do the process. And then also because I wasn't ready to discuss it, even though it was with the person who I've just poured my heart and soul to. So it was probably month 8 when I finally broke down and told people. I told my therapist and I told Spencer, and then I told Michael Lynch that I was, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to the doctor and I'm going on hormones.
No, I identified with what you said of becoming sober, having no physical belongings. You're also not working because you're really focusing on working your program, just not knowing who you are.
Exactly.
Because my whole life it had been morphing myself into whoever I thought you wanted me to be.
Exactly.
Depending on whoever I was with.
Yes.
So figuring out me was really hard. Even I like experimented and like tried to figure out my sexuality. To this day, I don't even exactly, know.
Yeah.
Super fluid, and you can't put it in a box.
No.
So figuring yourself out and like finding out who you are and what your interests are and how you want to express yourself is the fucking process.
Yeah, and it's like, it's an amazing experience, but it's fucking scary.
I can only imagine. Like, I empathize with you, but I have sympathy and just trying to understand how hard it is to even consider transitioning.
Yeah. And like I've talked to my sponsee about this and a few of my friends, like my literal transition, my literal transformation from when I first started getting clean to now is the representation that everybody has inside of them when they first get clean and to going through the process. Like, you can see the change in me, but the change in somebody else is inside of them. You're doing the same thing. You're transitioning too. You're transitioning from, your identity of being in active addiction to being a productive member of society who's mentally healthy. Yeah.
I like that. I like that analogy. That's actually really cool.
Yeah.
You said you went to therapy to get put on hormones. What is that process like for anybody who doesn't know?
Luckily, we live in California, so access to medical care isn't as difficult as it is in other states, which, by the way, I recognize, and I'm very, very grateful and happy, happy that I'm able to do that. So originally I went to a doctor it was telehealth. And then, but I had to pay out of pocket. And mind you, I was making $500 a month at this point because I was managing a sober living.
It was only $500.
Yeah, it was only $500. Rent free, no utilities, gas card, $500. So I went to a doctor, paid out of pocket because I didn't have health insurance at the time.
Yeah.
And I used my $500. I used probably like my first like $300 to go towards getting this done with a doctor. And it's the way that it is you meet with a doctor, you tell them informed consent. It's on you to make that decision. That's what informed consent is. You're informed of the process, and it is your choice to make that decision.
Oh, I thought it was like they tell you if you can get on hormones.
Nope. No, that's a process in other states, and that's old for California. Now they don't question you. They don't want to see how you present.
Yeah.
Because that's how it used to be. You need 1 year presenting female before you can get on hormones.
I think that's my brother doing that process in North Carolina. Like, he had to have a certain amount of therapy sessions with it's a harder process.
Yeah. So luckily, like I said, I'm in California and I didn't have to do that. So I just met with a doctor, talked to them. Here you go. Here's your Yas pills. Like, good.
Yas. It's a pill?
I take estradiol and spironolactone. So estrogen, I take 3 pills of that because my dose. And then I take spironolactone, and that suppresses testosterone. And I was spending a lot of my money, and I was going without eating so that I can be on these hormones. That's how much I wanted it.
How did you start feeling within yourself and about your body when you started estrogen? Like, when did you really start feeling the difference?
Yeah. So, probably around once I was on it, I was like, okay, I felt like something was starting to be able to start to unfurl or whatever. And probably around month 4, when I started seeing changes, I was like, this feels right. Like, I finally feel at peace in my body. Like, it was like my skin started getting smoother. I started having breast development, and it was something that I was happy about. I was a little scared because I was scared to start presenting or appearing female to people and them know, and then them, because my default is someone's gonna fight me and I'm gonna have to fight back. So when I started appearing a little bit more female, I started getting a little scared of that. I mean, being on hormones in sober living.
Yeah, I remembered you I remember like the month that you left, I think it was like a week before you left, I went to your house and you were like, get me the fuck out of here. I remember you being in a rush to get out.
Yeah.
And it was because you just didn't feel safe.
Yeah, I didn't. So when I first got on hormones, I was managing the house. So nobody needed to know what medication I was on. The 15 men that I lived with, the male sober living I lived in, they didn't need to know what I was on, what
Yeah.
medications I was taking. But when I stepped down and somebody else stepped in to be house manager, I was like, am I gonna hide these pills in my car? But I'm so like dedicated to the process where I was like, I can't hide stuff and I can't break the rules.
Yeah.
So I
like
told
you were living by principles.
yes, which was very annoying. So it made things more complicated, but I went to my house manager and I was like, hey, these are my medications. This is what I'm taking, period, done. But when more changes, more things in my life were starting to happen, I was like, okay, I don't feel like I belong in this sober living.
Yeah.
Not because of being sober, but because it was a male sober living.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being in a male sober living is also what helped me realize that I was female, because Jesus Christ, I do not identify with a lot of things that is going on and coming out of their mouths.
Yes.
Love them to death. But
that's what Spencer was talking about, like the conversations he gets, involved in, or like, gets put in the position, and like they're out of pocket.
Yeah. And what people will say when they think that group of people aren't there is mind-blowing. Like, they didn't know I was trans. They didn't know he was trans. So the things that they would say in front of us was vile, disgusting, scary, like they didn't know. So they were just saying things. Like, it's the same thing when white people aren't around black people. They'll say some wild shit.
It's so fucked up.
It is fucked up. But I mean, I had to stop being afraid of it, because it was like, I don't want to be the person that people think negatively about. I don't want to be the person that, they turn into a monster in their head. But I cannot change people's perceptions of me. I can only adjust how I feel and living my life authentically.
Yeah, and not dictating like yourself on how they view you.
Yeah, which is difficult.
Yeah, it is very hard, because we already have these like horrible beliefs about ourselves.
Yeah.
And if somebody else is saying really harsh shit to us, we're gonna like identify and internalize it.
Yes, exactly.
I want to kind of go into trauma.
Okay.
A little bit. So you said you had experienced sexual trauma?
So I have experienced sexual trauma. So being an addict, I was drunk all the time. I was 21 and I would go to parties and I would completely get blacked out, and I would do a lot of interesting things and
put ourselves in horrible situations.
Yeah. And one time I went to a party, and basically what happened was somebody wanted to have sex with me. I didn't want to have sex with them. And then they made that decision for me and they raped me. Oh. Yeah. So, and in that moment, like, because you hear about like sexual abuse and stuff like that, but when you experience it, like, that you don't want this, but you're not thinking I'm being raped. You're thinking like,
that's what I've heard.
I don't want to do this. I want this to be over as soon as possible. But you don't connect it right away.
You don't connect the dots.
Yeah.
I think I understand.
Even more was the second time that I was raped at 25. Mind you, okay, let me start this from the beginning. I worked in mental health, intense mental health, with basically clients were at our facility because they were committed a crime, and then they came to us because they couldn't be in jail or prison because of their mental illness. Basically like a criminally insane, like, I don't want to say it because that's actually not an accurate term, but for like people who don't know, they can relate that to that.
Okay.
While I was working there, like, I don't want to necessarily right now because I want to touch on sexual abuse, but I was almost like a client tried to kill me. He was actually getting charged with attempted murder. Basically what happened was a client tried to fight me. They did fight me. They choked me out. I lost consciousness. They were trying to kill me. Eventually I was able to get free of that, and whatever. I did that.
What's your certification?
So I'm a licensed psychiatric technician. It's I share the boards with LVN, so I'm like a psych nurse.
Okay.
So after that happened, like, they had to force me to go to the ER. I had a concussion. I'm pretty sure I have traumatic brain injury because I've been punched in the head like, I don't know, 60 times.
Yeah.
In the past like 5 years, 6 years. So that happened. I went home, took some time off. There was a man who was helping take care of me. He was really sweet. We were kind of dating. He would make me dinner. And one day after dinner, we went to go lay down and he wanted to have sex. And this is the first time that we've ever stayed the night together. And I wasn't in a good place. So I said, no, I don't want to.
I got a brain injury.
And he was bigger than me and he held me down and then he raped me.
I remember I had a conversation with somebody like, can you be raped by a partner? It's like, I believe so.
100%. You have the right to say no in any situation. No one has the right to your body. So I got hurt from this physical trauma, and then I got hurt from this sexual trauma, and that's when my addiction went crazy. And I didn't know why in those moments.
Yeah, you didn't know why, like, you wanted to go to substances.
Yeah, and it really fucked with my head because I was like, this person doesn't even know they raped me. They don't think that they did. They think they just had sex with someone.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like really like fucked with me for a long time. So that's when I picked up cocaine. And I went off. I wouldn't go to work. I would maybe work drunk. And that's when my depression happened. That's when I wouldn't take care of myself. That's when I would just do all kinds of like self-injurious things. I wanted to die so bad. I just wanted the drugs and the alcohol to take me out.
Suicidal like tendencies, ideations, but not of...
It wasn't active.
I'd rather drugs do it for me.
Yes. That's exactly what it was. It was my therapist or whoever. One time, I've had 10 therapists, told me you were passively killing yourself.
Yeah.
Because I was consciously knowing what I was doing. And I got really sick. I remember I went to the ER because one of my pupils blew. Oh. So I had one pupil that was big and one pupil that was really small.
Does that affect your vision?
No, but basically what it means is you're having a stroke.
Oh, God.
So I went to, and I had this rash all over me. It was like blood under my skin. Oh. I was all the way fucked up.
Yeah.
Anyways, I went to the emergency care. The doctor said, hey, you're having a stroke. We're going to take you to the ER. Went to the ER. Where I'm from, they do not treat addiction very well. And they were like, well, you're drunk.
Oh my gosh.
So going so long without alcohol, like 4 or 5 hours, at that point, I had a seizure in the waiting room. And then I was given a bottle of Ativan and sent home and said, stop drinking.
Porterville?
Yep.
Porterville.
Yep.
It's really crazy.
Yeah.
That there's still places in the world where people don't feel comfortable being gay or trans or struggle with substance abuse and don't feel safe or taken care of.
Exactly.
Tends to be more rural, farmy parts of the country.
Because they think all those things are choices.
Do you think you were born trans?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, I think that I was. I don't think it's me figuring it out was me figuring it out.
My definition of God is, a religious God, but my opinion is that God, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Even me being gay, I think like that was supposed to be a part of my life.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I ended up choosing this lifestyle for myself. But do you think it was like in your life path to go through that transition process?
Yes, and I think that I was supposed to do it at this rate. I think this is when it was supposed to happen. I don't have regrets. I don't hope or wish I did something sooner because this is all of that made me who I am right now. And I'm okay with that. People will say like, God doesn't make mistakes. God didn't make the mistake of making you gay or making you trans. Like, oh, what? God would have made a mistake making you be born male and then you have to transition. No, it's the same reason God made artists and bakers because we get to go through a creative process so that we can show the world something different. Yeah.
I like that.
I might not be wording that correctly, but it's how I think in my head about it. It's God didn't make a mistake. God wanted you to have an experience and show that experience to somebody else.
Yeah, and I honestly believe your story is going to help a lot of people.
Thank you.
And even in the program, people who've struggled with the same thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people's viewpoints against trans people is the whole God thing, and that God doesn't make mistakes. But that's also our point, is that God doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah. And
It's
I
funny.
mean, we can always go into like breaking that down, because why does God give people leukemia? Why does God do this? Why does God do
Yeah.
that? Like, why can you accept that, but you can't accept that my gender identity doesn't match my sex? And at this point, that's okay if you don't understand. I understand that your upbringing, where you come from, all the things that were told to you, that was your experience.
Yeah, it's all passed
'Cause
down, all
it's-
those viewpoints.
Yeah, and I understand.
Like, nobody comes out of the womb transphobic
Yeah,
or homophobic.
Exactly. That's those things are taught to us. So I don't, if somebody doesn't agree or accept me, that's okay. I hope you can see what I'm doing and you can see how happy I am, but that's okay. And, you know, maybe don't yell at me and call me slurs, but that's the littlest that I can hope for out of certain people. Please just don't stab me or kill me.
Yeah. It really sucks that you have to worry for your safety
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, not only now am I trans, but I'm also a woman. Women have to live in fear everywhere they go. Like, you can't, being in a parking garage at midnight, you know, walking from your car to your apartment.
That was on my fears list.
Yeah.
Parking garages.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
So I walk around everywhere with a knife and pepper spray now because I need to defend myself. When I was a gay man, I never worried about that. I never worried about walking down the street at 2 a.m. I never worried about going to a gas station. None of that I worried about. Going to a meeting, because it was just like, I blended in. I didn't stick out. People never really could see that I think people are going to say otherwise. I never thought that I appeared gay. I tried to be as masculine as I could to compensate for how I felt inside, so that I could hide it and bury it deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's why a lot of people will be confused and are confused about me, because they're like, oh, but you spent years with a fade and, with a mustache and working out at the gym to get big muscles. And it's like, because I was trying to create a character that fit your narrative.
Ah,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah. I was playing a part.
So what does it mean to you to be a woman?
That is a difficult question to answer. And that's a question that transphobes like to pick apart.
Really?
Because some people will say the definition of being a woman is dressing feminine.
The chromosomes.
Yeah. But so what they'll hear sometimes is, being a woman to me is growing my hair out, wearing nails, wearing makeup, getting breasts, X, Y, and Z. That's not what it means to be a woman.
Period.
Having a uterus also doesn't mean to me what it means to be a woman. Having XX chromosomes, that's not what it means to be a woman. Being a woman is an experience. It's so hard to break that down, because it's a feeling. It's a pull, a desire of feeling this way.
I understand, I think.
Yeah.
Because you know me, how I dress, how I kind of go about my mannerisms. It's not like feminine and woman-like-ish, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like all the way man appearing, but on the inside, I feel people have misgendered me in the past. Like, I've worked at
I'm
a
not
pizza.
surprised that people would do that. Not because of how you look, but because if you wear a hoodie and pants,
Have short hair.
yeah.
So people have done that in the past. I did pizza delivery for a while, and I would literally walk up to people's door. It's like, oh, hey, here, it's going to be whatever. And they're like, oh, thank you, sir. And sometimes I didn't even correct them, because I was like, I'm embarrassed. And then sometimes I'd be like, it's ma'am, but like, the ma'am and sir thing pisses me off. Anyways, but I feel really closely, like deeply on the inside, that like I'm a woman. I feel a woman.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the woman's experience and the experiences I have, even though sometimes they're shitty, sometimes they're awesome.
Yeah.
But I understand what you mean. It's more of a feeling.
We don't need to identify, for me, I don't want to speak for other people. We don't need to identify gender by aesthetics.
Yeah.
And we also have to remember, gender is a construct that was made up, like all these gender roles.
Yes.
Like laws and rules and a society.
Yeah.
That was all made up. We used to just exist. And in some cultures, there was more than 2 genders. And, you know, and trans people are part of other cultures. It's when certain people came and colonized and changed that. Because in their literature, it said this is only, they're only this and that. But in other cultures, that's not the case.
Yeah, that's what I kind of talked about on Spencer's podcast. Like, I don't understand gender because it's all made up.
Right?
How has been you mentioned the trauma, the fightings. How has it been processing and working through that sexual trauma and such?
I finally got to start working on it when I went to sober living and I was in intensive outpatient because I was triggered as fuck. Being around all men all the time, all the high aggression, I don't want, like, just their demeanor read aggressive to me. So for the first time...
And that could be because of trauma.
Yeah, 100%. And in those moments, nobody was doing anything. So my body was like waiting. So that's when I was able to finally start identifying those feelings and I could start changing those pathways in my brain because every time I see a man does not mean I'm going to get killed.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of relationships with men that started healing that because they showed to me that a man isn't always going to hurt me.
Right.
That's when I started being able to heal from it and working with a therapist, you know, and working with my sponsor and the steps. I mean, above all, the steps are the main thing that helped me healing from my trauma. With me being sexually abused, I became hypersexual for a while because it's like, I don't know why we do it, but sometimes we do it to like, maybe we're trying to rid ourselves of it. We're trying to get a new experience to get rid of that old one or whatever it is. And there's also a lot of validation. So when I went to sober living, I stopped having sex. And that kind of started helping me because then I started being able to look at myself again.
There's no more buffers, no sex, no drugs.
Exactly. So I had all of those things taken away and I was able to really look at the trauma and be like, accept that it was trauma and accept that those things did happen to me.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have, but they did.
And it's like, who are you going to be in the face of like working through those things?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't define you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And that's a whole process of accepting. Yeah. I didn't accept that I had trauma for when I got sober.
Yeah.
Remember in my admissions thing, the assessment they do, I was like, they were like, have you experienced any trauma? I was like, no. You know, and I've experienced a number of things and I just didn't recognize it or identify with it.
Yeah.
What wasn't taught.
Yeah. It's very interesting how we will put things to the side. And in my mind at the time, if I accepted that there was trauma, I had to accept the fact that I was victimized and I couldn't defend myself because I always had to be somebody who was on the offensive. I'm going to get you before you get me, like fighting. And so when I had to admit that that was trauma, for a little bit, I had to be like, I'm a loser. I let that happen, but I had to identify that that's not right, you know? And that was hard.
Yeah.
Because I was always like, I learned how to fight very young because I wasn't going to I wasn't going to be a victim. You want to come for me? I'm going to fuck you up. And I still have that mindset a little bit, but I'm trying to adjust. So when somebody tells me something, I'm not like, all right, well, I'll stab you. Come for me.
Civil first.
Yeah, now I'm like, okay, you know, that is your opinion. I don't agree with it. However, you know, maybe we shouldn't talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
I've had a negative experience coming out so far, you know?
You have?
Yeah.
Really?
I've spent like, you know, half my week as a gay man, half my week as a trans woman for the past few months. And so I finally decided like I'm tired of living a double life. So I came out at work and I came out on social media. Shortly after I came out on social media, I get a message from somebody that says, why'd you change your name? And I'm like, well, look at my profile picture and maybe you'll know. And then they said, and I told them and they were like, oh no, you're not trans. You're just a gay guy. Are you talking to your sponsor about this? You should talk to your sponsor about this. And I was just like, I shouldn't have to defend myself, but I did.
You did.
Yeah, I was like, well, I'm a girl. My sponsor's known since last year. And they were and I was like, maybe you need to talk to your sponsor. And I didn't mean to say it like,
Dude, that's like the one like most offensive thing
Yeah.
you can say to somebody else in recovery.
But
It's like, talk to yours. Like somebody told me that, I got pissed.
yeah, yeah. Well, you said it to me first, so I'll say it right back. But I wasn't really trying to be like shady in that moment. I was just like, hey, your sponsor knows a lot about it, so maybe talk to them
Yeah.
if you can't understand it from me. And then they responded back, fuck you, you're a trans, this and that, you're the one. And then they blocked me. And that was somebody who meant something to me. They were somebody who like I cared about, and it was really hard for me. I cried and I don't want to admit this because I don't want somebody else to know that what they said affected me, and I don't want other people to think what they say will affect me.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest and raw about it. I cried for an hour straight because it hurt so bad that somebody who I cared about, who cared about me, no longer wanted anything to do with me. And, I talked to like 3 of my predecessors. It was so embarrassing. They FaceTimed me, and 3 of them were all together in a car, and they're like, how are you doing? And I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Just crying. But through that, I started getting a perspective of somebody else's experience and be like, okay, you know what? For whatever reason, that's what's been told to you.
So is there anything else you want to like tell anybody who's been struggling with like the stigmas around being trans or struggling with trauma?
I don't want to say, oh, it's going to be amazing. Oh, it will be, received so well. But what I do want to say, how you feel inside and you knowing how you feel about your gender is okay. You are valid. I see you. I hear you. I love you. If somebody didn't tell you today, I love you. And it might be difficult, especially of where you're at. Get on that internet, girl, and get those resources because they're there. And just know that there will be people that will support you. You need to go find them.
Yeah. I'll actually put resources in the description.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but thank you for coming on, Cassie.
Thank you for hearing me, allowing me to share.
Yeah, of course. This is the place where people can, use their voice.
Yeah.
And
I really
tell their story.
Yeah. I really just, I hope that one person hears something and they get inspired by it, or they can relate and feel valid,
Or understand and get a new perspective.
Yeah. I mean, if hopefully one person who is uncomfortable with how I present can see something a little different.
Just one.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you. I love you.
I love you too.